The Galactic Dominion had fought many battles, but this one was different. For the first time in 1,000 years, a species refused to surrender. The Dominion had conquered hundreds of worlds, destroyed empires, and wiped out civilizations with their overwhelming power. Their war fleets numbered in the millions, and their technology was centuries ahead of most. No one resisted for long. But then came humanity. Before we start, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. Only 4% of my channel is subscribed. When the Dominion arrived at the edge of human space, they sent their usual demand: surrender and become a vassal, or face destruction. Most species gave in immediately. The humans didn't. Their response was strange. No desperate negotiations, no pleas for mercy. Just one word: acknowledged. That was it. No threats, no begging. Just acknowledged. The Dominion's War Council laughed. They thought the humans were just another primitive race, too proud to know their place. The invasion fleet, 50,000 ships strong, moved forward, expecting an easy victory. They reached the first human colony and met resistance. Primitive railguns, nuclear missiles. Nothing that could stop them. The colony fell in hours. The second colony took longer, days instead of hours. The humans fought harder than expected, their weapons more effective than they should have been. By the time the Dominion reached Earth, they expected to face a broken, desperate species. Instead, Earth's defenses were ready. And then the humans sent just one ship. At first, the Dominion thought it was a mistake. A single ship moving toward the heart of their fleet. It barely registered on their sensors, its power output laughable compared to their massive dreadnoughts. Admiral Zral watched the tactical display, amused. They think one ship can save them. His officers chuckled. The Dominion fleet numbered in the tens of thousands. The human ship was a speck in comparison. Then the speck moved. It didn't attack in the usual way. It didn't dodge, run, or negotiate. It accelerated straight toward the Dominion flagship. At first, they thought it was a suicide run, desperate and primitive. But then the Dominion's shields flickered, systems shut down, and then the real horror began. The ship wasn't firing weapons. It was the weapon. Admiral Zral barely had time to react before his fleet's comms were flooded with screams. Something was happening. Ships were going dark. Crews were being erased. Not killed, just gone. The human ship kept moving, cutting through the fleet like a knife. The Dominion had sent 50,000 ships, and in minutes, only silence remained. The lone human ship sent one final message before disappearing. Acknowledged. The war was over. Panic spread through the Dominion's leaders. 50,000 ships, gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone. No debris, no wreckage, just empty space where the fleet had been. The news spread quickly. Billions of Dominion citizens who had always believed in their empire's invincibility were terrified. Military leaders and scientists studied the data, but no one could explain what had happened. Admiral Zral was dead. His entire command was gone. No escape pods, no distress signals, just silence. The human ship had vanished after its final message. Acknowledged. The Dominion had faced resistance before, but nothing like this. It wasn't just a defeat, it was erasure. And the worst part, they had no idea how the humans had done it. Emperor Voron Chaw stood in the throne room, his massive form trembling. Around him, his advisors argued in hushed tones. "We need to strike back," one warlord shouted. "Send everything we have. Burn their worlds to ash." "Fool," a strategist snapped. "We don't even know what happened to the First Fleet. They didn't fight us. They erased us." The room fell silent. That was the real horror. The Dominion's fleets were built to win through sheer numbers. They could lose millions and still crush their enemies. But this wasn't a loss. It was nothing, no casualties, just gone. The Emperor turned to his chief intelligence officer, a sharp, calculating figure with golden eyes. "Do we know what that ship was?" The officer hesitated. "Not entirely, my lord, but we intercepted something." A screen lit up, showing the last moments of the battle from a scout ship that had been too far away to be affected. The human ship, small and unassuming compared to the Dominion's massive dreadnoughts, moved with eerie precision. Then, as it cut through the fleet, something changed. Space itself seemed to bend unnaturally, and then the Dominion ships simply vanished. The officer's voice was tense. Whatever they used, it wasn't normal. No energy spikes, no weapon signatures. It was like they rewrote reality itself. The room was silent. The Dominion had always believed they were the most advanced, the most powerful. But what if the humans were something else entirely? While scientists scrambled for answers, the Dominion's spies focused on finding Earth. They already knew about it. A Category 3 civilization, advanced but not galactic tier. Their technology was nowhere near Dominion levels. They had no superweapons, no reality-bending ships. So where had that one ship come from? Agents searched every corner of human space, hacked their networks, and found nothing. No mention of an experimental ship, no evidence of advanced weapons. It was as if humanity didn't even know what had happened. Their news networks ran as usual. Their military stayed in standard positions. Their people lived in blissful ignorance. If they weren't responsible, then who was? As the Dominion struggled to understand, another message arrived. This time, it came from the edge of Dominion space. The message was simple. One ship was enough. Do not make us send another. It included coordinates. A challenge. The Emperor hesitated. His warlords wanted revenge. His strategists urged caution. In the end, he sent a smaller fleet, 1,000 ships, a show of strength. If the humans refused to explain, the fleet would force them. The ships left immediately, heading for the coordinates. Every soldier, every officer knew they were walking into the unknown, but none of them knew they would never return. The fleet arrived at the coordinates, a patch of empty space at the edge of Dominion territory. No planets, no moons, no stations, just the void. It felt like a trap. Admiral Jarth Kren, commanding the fleet, stared at the tactical display. No enemy ships, no anomalies, nothing. But unease crept into his mind. One ship was enough. Do not make us send another. He had dismissed it as a bluff. Now, he wasn't so sure. Full scan, he ordered. If the humans think empty space, will scare us. They're wrong. The sensors swept the area. Nothing. No cloaked ships, no hidden weapons, just emptiness. Then the lights flickered. What was that? Kren demanded. Minor power fluctuation, sir. No cause detected. Kren didn't like that. Dominion ships didn't malfunction. Check all systems. Before the officer could respond, another flicker rocked the ship. This time, it spread to other vessels. A cold dread settled in Kren's gut. Something was here. Something unseen. And then the screaming started. Sir, we're losing contact with multiple ships. Kren turned to the display. Icons flickered, some vanishing entirely. No explosions, no distress calls, just gone. Are they cloaking? He demanded. No, sir. They're disappearing. That word again. Disappearing. Kren's claws tightened. Full retreat, now! The fleet tried to turn. Engines roared. Warp drives activated. But it was too late. Space itself seemed to shudder. Kren's eyes widened as he saw it. Something moving in the void. Not a ship. Not a fleet. A presence. A ripple in reality. Then the voices came. Not through comms, but straight into their minds. You were warned. The Dominion fleet ceased to exist. The Emperor waited for news of his fleet's victory. A screen tracked the 1,000 ships. Then, in an instant, every icon vanished. Gasps filled the room. Warlords, strategists, and scientists stared in horror. No one. Someone whispered. The Emperor rose, trembling. "Tell me this is a mistake." But it wasn't. The only thing left on the screen was a new message. Final warning. Silence fell over the Dominion. For the first time, they had met something stronger than themselves, and they were powerless. Panic spread. The fleet was gone, vanished. No wreckage, no survivors. 1,000 ships erased. And now, a message hung over them. Final warning. Emperor Voron Cha trembled as he read the words. His advisors were silent, their arrogance shattered. "What do we do?" one minister finally asked. For the first time in 1,000 years, no one had an answer. They had ruled the galaxy through strength. Their fleets were invincible. Their empire was untouchable. But humanity, or whatever force was behind them, had changed everything. The Dominion was no longer the top predator. It was prey. 3 days later, the Emperor did something no Dominion ruler had ever done. He sent a message of surrender. Not a declaration of war, not a demand for negotiation. Just 4 words, broadcast into the void. "We do not resist." They waited. Hours passed. Then days. Every moment stretched their fear to the breaking point. Had they been too late? Would the next message from humanity be another erasure? Then finally, a response. Not through a transmission, but across every Dominion system. Every screen, every console, every display. The same message appeared, as if written into reality itself. Acknowledged. That was it. No demands, no punishment, just that single, chilling word. And with it, the Dominion knew humanity had chosen mercy. Or perhaps they no longer saw the Dominion as a threat. The Dominion never recovered. They never sent another fleet beyond their borders. They never expanded again. Their once great empire shrank, crippled by fear. To the outside galaxy, the Dominion was still powerful. But those within knew the truth. They were no longer conquerors. They were survivors. And every night, every Dominion citizen, every leader, would look into the dark void of space, knowing something watched them. Something that had erased 50,000 ships without a trace. Something that had given them a final warning. And if they ever crossed that line again, there would be no mercy. Years passed. The Dominion, once the most feared power in the galaxy, became stagnant. Their war fleets, once instruments of terror, now patrolled their borders like caged animals. Expansion stopped. Conquests ended. Fear reshaped their empire. No one spoke of the humans anymore, not in public, not in private. Their name became a ghost, whispered in fear, but never acknowledged. But fear alone couldn't hold an empire together. Doubt grew within the Dominion. Some thought they had surrendered too quickly. Others believed they had escaped destruction by luck. And then there were those who whispered something worse, that humanity had never been the real enemy. Deep in, the Dominion's archives, an encrypted file remained untouched for decades, the last transmission from Admiral Kren's fleet. It had been sealed by the Emperor himself. But in times of weakness, secrets slip out. A young scientist managed to access the file. She expected data, footage, something to explain the disappearance. What she found was a message, not from the humans, not in any known language. It was something older, a cold, alien voice speaking in overlapping echoes. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. The boundary was tested. The line was crossed. The consequence was delivered. And then a warning. They are not yours to challenge. The scientist barely had time to understand before her access was revoked. Within hours, she was taken from her home. She was never seen again. The humans had never fought them. They had never built a superweapon, never used advanced technology, never even known what had happened. Something else had intervened. Something older than the Dominion, older than humanity. Something that watched. And humanity, knowingly or not, was under its protection. The Dominion had not been defeated. They had been warned. And across the galaxy, in the darkest corners of space, something stirred once more, because the boundary had been tested, and next time, the consequence might not be mercy. Now enjoy. Next story, it's more amazing. The Zaran had ruled the Orion arm of the galaxy for nearly 1,000 years. Their empire stretched across thousands of star systems. Their fleets patrolled every known hyperspace lane, and their warriors had crushed any species that dared to resist their rule. They had fought wars against insectoid hive minds, battled silicon-based war machines, and even wiped out an entire race of sentient gas clouds. And yet, through all their conquests, they had never once known fear. That changed when the human warship arrived. It was not a fleet, not an armada, not even a battle group. It was one ship, one lone vessel that emerged from the darkness of space. Its hull was black as the void itself. It bore no markings of an empire, no insignia of a ruling council. It carried only a single name in a language most of the galaxy could not read. Vengeance. The Zaran laughed when they first saw it. They had seen countless primitive species try to resist them before, and they had crushed them all with ease. But something about this ship was different. It did not run, it did not broadcast surrender, and it did not beg for mercy. It simply waited. The Zaran Admiral Kiosvar watched from the bridge of his command dreadnought, the Imperium's wrath. He was a veteran of 100 campaigns, a warrior who had seen entire planets burn. He found it almost amusing that this lone ship thought it could stand against the might of the Zaran Empire. "Send a warning shot," he ordered lazily. A pulse of plasma fire streaked across the void, a brilliant arc of destruction meant to scare the foolish humans into submission. It missed the Vengeance by mere kilometers, but the ship did not so much as flinch. Then, without warning, it moved. The ship accelerated faster than any vessel the Zaran had ever seen. It did not follow known flight patterns. It did not adhere to the predictable physics of space combat. It zigzagged through the void, twisting and turning with impossible agility. The dreadnought's tracking system struggled to lock on, its gunners cursing in frustration. "Impossible," Var muttered under his breath. And then the Vengeance opened fire. There was no energy buildup, no slow charging of weapons, no visible torpedoes or plasma bolts. One moment, the Zaran fleet was whole, and the next, half of it was gone. Ships shattered like glass, their hulls torn apart by unseen forces. Explosions rippled through the void, and the Admiral could hear the panicked screams of his officers as the destruction unfolded. This isn't possible." One of his sub-commanders shouted. It wasn't just the raw firepower that terrified them. It was the precision. The human warship did not fire blindly. It did not unleash chaotic devastation. Every shot was surgical, every blast targeted. It was as if the ship knew exactly where to hit, exactly how to dismantle their most powerful vessels. The Zaran had fought hundreds of wars. They had faced foes with superior numbers, advanced technology, and deadly weapons. But never before had they faced an enemy who did not fight with rage or desperation. The humans fought like predators, cold, calculated, efficient. Var clenched his mandibles. Open a channel. Demand their surrender. But before his transmission could even go through, the Vengeance spoke first. A single message broadcast across all frequencies. "We are here for justice. Surrender now or be erased." And for the first time in 1,000 years, the Zaran Empire felt fear. Admiral Kiosvar's mandibles clicked anxiously. Fear was an emotion unfamiliar to him, unwelcome in his mind, yet it slithered through his chest like a parasite. The human warship hung in the void, motionless once more, as if waiting, no, daring them to make a move. How? How is this possible? One of his bridge officers stammered, his scaled hands trembling over his console. One ship against an entire fleet? Var snarled. It's a trick, some kind of advanced weapon stolen from another race. The humans don't have this kind of power. He wasn't sure if he was trying to convince his crew or himself. The bridge was filled with chaos, officers shouting over one another, status reports flooding in. Half their fleet was destroyed in under a minute. Half. Entire battles had been fought and won with fewer casualties. And yet, the human warship had not taken a single hit. Var slammed his fist against his command console. All remaining ships form a defensive line. Focus all weapons on that vessel. I don't care what it takes. Destroy it. The Zaran ships obeyed. Plasma cannons, disruptor torpedoes, ion lances, all of them turned their wrath toward the Vengeance. The void lit up with the firepower of an empire, energy scorching across the blackness of space, converging upon the lone human warship. For a moment, Var allowed himself to believe it was over. Then the Vengeance moved again. Not away, not to evade. Forward. Straight through the storm of fire as if it were nothing. Weapons meant to tear through the hulls of dreadnoughts simply vanished upon impact. Shields that should have been overwhelmed held firm, shimmering with an eerie, almost unnatural glow. The ship cut through their fleet like a shadow in the dark, untouched, unscathed, unstoppable. The bridge of the Imperium's wrath erupted in horror. Officers shouted in disbelief. Some abandoned their stations as if fleeing would save them. Impossible, Var roared, gripping the edges of his command chair. His mind raced. This had to be a trick, a deception, some kind of illusion. Then, the human ship fired again. This time, it did not simply destroy, it disassembled. A Zaran battle cruiser, the Back's Pride, crumbled in an instant. Not an explosion, not a detonation. The ship unraveled, its armor peeling away, its weapons melting into dust, its crew vanishing as if they had never existed. Var's heart pounded in his chest. No known weapon in the galaxy could do this, not even the most advanced doomsday. Devices had the power to erase a ship so cleanly, so effortlessly. "This is your last warning," the human voice echoed through the comms, cold and absolute. "Surrender." Var clenched his fists. The Zaran Empire had conquered thousands of worlds. They had raised civilizations, enslaved species, crushed rebellions without mercy. They had never surrendered, and yet his eyes darted to the destruction. Outside. The human ship did not negotiate. It did not ask for peace. It did not waver. For the first time in his life, Admiral Kios Var felt truly, completely powerless. And for the first time in the history of the Zaran Empire, a commander spoke, the words his kind had never spoken before. "We surrender." A suffocating silence fell over the bridge of the Imperium's wrath. The words had left Admiral Kios Var's mouth, but they felt foreign, unnatural. The Zaran Empire had never surrendered, never. And yet, as the human warship, Vengeance, loomed before them, as his once mighty fleet lay in ruins, there was no other choice. His officers stared at him in shock, some with wide, disbelieving eyes, others with barely contained rage. A few even reached for their weapons, as if the very idea of surrender was more intolerable than death. Var ignored them. His pride, his honor, none of it mattered anymore. Survival did. A moment passed. Then another. The Vengeance did not reply. The silence stretched so long that Var began to wonder if the humans had even heard his words. He opened his mandibles to speak again, to repeat the surrender, when the human ship finally responded. Acknowledged. One word, simple. Unfeeling. A brief pulse of energy rippled from the Vengeance, washing over the remaining Zaran ships. Systems flickered, weapons shut down, shields powered off. A soft hum resonated through the bridge of the Imperium's wrath, like a great beast exhaling after a long hunt. The humans had disabled them. Var felt a strange mixture of relief and humiliation settle in his chest. They could have finished the job. They could have erased every last one of them from existence, just as they had done to the Back's pride. Instead, they had accepted his surrender. He should have been grateful. So why did it feel like something far worse was coming? A new voice crackled over the comms. This time, it was not the cold, mechanical broadcast from before. It was something else, something alive. Admiral Kios Var, the voice said, smooth and precise. A human voice, male, unhurried, yet carrying the weight of something ancient and deliberate. You have fought well, but your empire is finished, swallowed thickly. The Zaran Empire is vast. This is but one fleet. No, the voice countered. It was your best fleet, your strongest commanders, your most advanced warships. The human let the words settle before delivering the killing blow. And we just destroyed them with one ship. Var felt his stomach churn. He knew it was true, but hearing the enemy say it, calmly, factually, made it undeniable. You think your empire will recover, the voice continued. It will not. As we speak, your homeworld is being surrounded. Your supply lines are being severed. Your colonies are being burned. A chill ran through Var's bones. Impossible. No species could move that fast. You misunderstand. A pause. We have already been here. Var's breath hitched. His claws gripped the armrest of his chair. You. What? You are only learning now what has already been decided. For the first time in his life, Admiral Kios Var understood what it meant to lose. And the worst part? The humans weren't celebrating. They weren't gloating. They weren't demanding tribute or forcing the Zaran into servitude. They were simply ending them, with cold, brutal efficiency, with the same terrifying precision they had wielded against his fleet. This was not conquest. This was eradication. The humans had arrived, and they were finishing the war. The Zaran had started centuries ago. Admiral Kios Var sat frozen in his command chair, the weight of the humans, words suffocating him. We have already been here. That phrase gnawed at his mind like a parasite. It made no sense. If humanity had already struck, if they had already reached the heart of the Zaran Empire, why hadn't there been reports? Why hadn't there been cries for reinforcements, desperate pleas for aid? The homeworld, the throne world of the Grand Dominion, had the strongest defenses in the entire empire. And yet, the human spoke with absolute certainty. The bridge of the Imperium's wrath was silent. His crew stared at him, waiting for orders. He could see the silent battle in their eyes, the same question whispered through the air. What now? Var. Deke opened his mandibles to speak when the main view screen flickered to life. His blood turned to ice. The screen did not show the stars, nor the ruined wreckage of his once mighty fleet. Instead, it displayed Zaria Prime, the capital of their empire, the jewel of their dominion, and it was burning. The towering citadels of the High Caste were in ruins. Great pillars of smoke rose into the atmosphere like funeral pyres. The defensive orbital stations were nothing more than twisted debris. The once bustling cities, teeming with trillions of Zaran, were eerily silent. It was a graveyard. Var's mandibles quivered. No, he whispered, barely able to force the word out. It is already over. The human's voice returned, unrelenting, undeniable. This was not an invasion. This was not a war. This was justice. Var's claws dug into his chair. His heart pounded. His mind scrambled for something, anything to explain what he was seeing. The humans had always been a minor species. They had been nothing, a fledgling race, barely stepping into the stars. The Zaran had barely considered them worth the effort of subjugation, and yet here they were, tearing down a 1,000-year empire as if it were nothing. The screen shifted, and Var felt his stomach drop further. The throne of the Grand Dominion, the Hall of Conquerors, the most sacred place in the entire empire, where the Supreme Arch ruled over all, was in ruins. The golden banners of Zaran supremacy were shredded, trampled in the dust. And in the center of the throne room, a single figure stood, a human, clad in black armor. The visor of their helmet reflected the firelight. They held something in their hand. Var squinted. It was a severed head. The Supreme Arch, the ruler of the Zaran Empire. Dead. The human warrior raised the severed, head high, turning it toward the cameras broadcasting across the empire. And then they dropped it. The head rolled down the shattered steps of the throne, bouncing like a discarded piece of garbage. A statement. A declaration. The Zaran Empire was no more. Var's claws trembled. How? His voice was barely above, a whisper. How did you do this? How did you destroy an empire in a single strike? For the first time, the human on the comms let out a slow breath. The same way you did once. Var's breath hitched. We learned from you. The realization hit him like a plasma blast. The humans had been watching, studying, learning. All those years of Zaran conquests, all those brutal campaigns where they had crushed weaker species, torn apart civilizations without a second thought. The humans had seen it all, and when their time came, they had not fought with desperation. They had not fought with rage. They had fought like the Zaran had taught them, without mercy. Your people will not suffer as ours did, the humans said, because there will be no one left to suffer. Var's breath caught in his throat. The screen flickered again. He saw Zaran warships plummeting from the skies, their burning wrecks crashing into the cities below. He saw entire military districts being wiped clean by orbital bombardments. He saw escape shuttles desperately trying to flee, being obliterated, one by one. We were weak once, the human continued. You made us strong. Now we make sure you never harm anyone again. A deep hum filled the bridge of the Imperium's wrath. The vengeance was powering its weapons. Var realized in that moment that this was not surrender. This was execution. He slumped back in his chair, his mandibles parting slightly. There was no rage, no defiance, just cold, sinking acceptance. This was how it ended. The Zaran Empire had never feared war until the humans brought it to their doorstep, and now there was nothing left. A quick reminder to hit the subscribe button only. 4% of my channel is subscribed.